Well, this is what we would call the last of the series of the chats today, and we have enjoyed them immensely, whether anyone else has or not.
Yes, and we want to thank all the many people who have watched it. I was looking back over the chats today, and I realized we have done a lot of chats on talking to each other during these strange and pioneer times. And that turns out to be important, apparently, because the largest audiences in the number of views we've had have been on the subject of talking to each other.
Yes, and of course, we have been doing for several years now, about 6.5 to 7 years, the Marriage Enrichment Group Date Night, which we call MEG Date Night. And I think we're getting ready. The next one will be number 93 that we've done month after month. But in those sessions, couples have said things like, we don't know how to begin to have couple talk. We never talk about these kinds of things except when we come here to the MEG Date Night. And you raise questions that we never think about talking about.
But they're always simple questions.
Yes.
They're just some subjects that researchers say many couples have trouble talking about. So we've just picked one of those this morning to talking about money.
But the topic, as you may already know, is how to start talking about, and then you could name the subject.
The top ones that give couples difficulty we hear are money, always at the top, sex, in-laws, sometimes children. The subjects vary, but money is on everybody's list.
And conflict difficulties.
Yes. So we picked money today to talk about how to start talking about a difficult subject.
But the way that we want to phrase this, and then we're going to talk about it, but you could phrase it with your partner. It's describe the financial habits of your family of origin.
Often without even thinking about it, our attitudes, our choices are driven by things that we learned or we caught when we were growing up.
Right.
And without ever examining them, we simply come out and express an opinion on something. And it may have worked in the home we grew up in, but we have a different partner than the two adults in the home where we were raised.
We're in a different family.
A different family. So we have to figure out those attitudes behind the choices we make about various subjects.
But think of it this way. You can talk about any subject, describe the financial habits, describe the sexual habits, describe the in-laws' attitudes. I mean, you can take almost any subject from this question. Describe.
Well, okay, let's do it.
Okay.
What were some of the situations regarding money in the home where you grew up?
Well, we've talked about this many times, but I grew up in a home that really every month we seemed to have more month at the end of our money. And as a result, oftentimes we didn't have any money to buy groceries. And I know that was difficult. My parents oftentimes had a charge account at the neighborhood food store. And therefore that would go up, and they didn't really have the money to pay it off, but they just kept a charge account going. And that's how we sometimes ate. But I found myself wanting to pinch pennies and then quarters and then 50 cents and then dollars. And I one time pulled a $5 bill out of my billfold when I was probably 9 or 10 years old and gave it to my mother so we could have some groceries.
Well, that is very interesting and explains a lot to me because you're a man who is very careful with money and always has been. You like a bargain. I don't even like for you to go to the grocery store with me because if something is on a buy one, get two free sale, you think we ought to do that.
It's a good saving.
It is, but we don't often have places to store all the things that are buy one, get two free. But growing up, as you did, I could understand a lot of your attitudes toward money. You want us to have some, and you don't like to spend it.
That's
well,
right.
I grew up in a different situation.
You did.
And I never thought much about money.
Well, you are an only child, and your parents provided with you in many ways.
Yes, and they didn't discuss finances before me. So since they didn't, I didn't think about it very much.
Right.
And I went off to
Makes sense.
school, and money got put in my bank account, and I lived within my means.
Mhm.
So money just never was very important.
But if you needed some, it would be there. It would be there in your account. I remember as soon as I was 16, I went to look for a job as soon as I could go get one. Although I had found other ways to make money, like mowing lawns or selling salve or something door to door when I was much smaller.
Well, now that's interesting to me too, that you have a high work ethic.
Right.
You may have been driven to it because you wanted money as a little boy, since your family had little, but you still have that ethic. It's important to work.
Yes, and I also was very concerned as I got older that my father became obsolete with his skills. He was a telegraph operator for many, many years, knew the international code and the Morse code. And but when telephones came in, they didn't need his skill. And as a result of that, he was obsolete as far as his main skills and working. So he just had to find ways to continue to work until he retired. And I felt a concern that I don't want to be obsolete in my training and my work. So I went back to school at age 50 to do my PhD in marriage and family.
And changed careers?
Changed careers.
And I remember at the time friends telling you, wow, that's really brave to give up your insurance, your annuities.
Right. And I didn't see it as brave. I saw it as the logical next step.
You didn't want to be obsolete like your father.
Right. Actually, I said, I'm 50. I could live to be 100. And if I needed skill training for the first half of my life, I need it for the second half of my life.
But do you see how even today we still hang on to those attitudes?
Yes.
You're very careful with money.
Yes.
Very, very careful. I'm not that interested in it. I know it's important to have, but I really don't think about it very much.
No.
And those are just differences that we came to our relationship.
However, one time when our children were in school age, I remember doling out money that they needed for lunch. They're going to sign up for something. They needed some cash for that. And pretty soon my pocket was empty of money. And then you needed some. And so you said, I feel like I'm asking my parents for money. And you didn't like that feeling. So you made another suggestion.
Important that I have some money that's not salary, that's not going into bill paying account, that's not obligated. It's just money for me.
Right.
And very early, we worked out that I could have some money that was just for me, and I didn't have to account for it to anybody.
It didn't mean that I was the one giving you the money. it meant that I oftentimes went to the bank, and what we did is, I mean, you could write a check on anything because we had a joint account and still do. But that was a simple thing to do, was to establish an amount that you wanted to have on a regular basis every month.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, so one way to talk about a difficult issue is to go back to family of origin and look at some of the attitudes you have toward money and that you have developed over time. Sharing those together is helpful. There's a second one, though.
yes, and that is, what takeaways have you carried into your adult life about the financial background or habits of your family of origin?
Well, I know what my one takeaway is. And I didn't get it from my parents. I learned it from my grandmother.
Oh, really?
Yes, who was a farm lady and had to be very prudent with money always.
Okay.
And she told me, always save something.
Save some.
Save something. And
for yourself.
For yourself,
Okay.
yes. Have some money. And so I do. I always keep some money somewhere that I know I have in case we need it for anything.
Yes, but
it's kind of silly because we have a bank account, we have a savings account.
Yeah, you have access to it.
But I've carried that idea with me that it's important to save something.
Well, and of course you give it away a lot of times.
Well, it's mine. I can give it to grandchildren. One thing, when they were in college, I established a contract with them. If they would write me a letter. A letter, not a
just
text.
Call you or a text.
A letter, I would write them back.
Use stamps.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I would write them back, and I would put a $20 bill in there. And some of them picked up on that right away and wrote me regularly.
And others didn't. It's amazing.
Others didn't, yes.
It was very interesting.
Well, do you have a takeaway?
Well, I certainly do. And that one of them is that I think that that you shoot straight with the people you're talking to, that you go ahead and say what the situation is. I know when I was in college, I told the president of the university that I really couldn't afford to come to college, that I needed to find a job. And he helped me find a job at the university bookstore. Mm-hmm. And of course, I already was working in another job. And but it took that kind of initiative and to shoot straight with people and be honest about what you needed and wanted.
And money is one of those subjects, apparently, where honesty on the part of both partners is really important.
Yes, and I recall when I was looking at a job somewhere at a church, the person interviewing me said, "Would you like to know what your salary will be?" And I said, "Well, I would, certainly." And he told me, and I seemed disappointed. And I said, well, I would have thought it would have been, and then I gave another number. And he said, well, that's what I make. And I said, well, then you're not making enough.
Well, I know you've always been a straight shooter. And for someone with an attitude toward money like mine, which is, it is important, but it isn't that important.
Right.
It's been helpful to have somebody who finds it very important, shoots straight about it, acknowledges where we are.
Right.
And that has helped me with a totally different background and attitude to pay more attention to money. Well, I want to go back to talking.
Okay.
Because this is a subject.
That's what I wanted to do.
This is a subject that has been very important for us, all different kinds of talking.
Yes.
And I found this morning some research by a couple that were speaking at a marriage conference we attended years ago.
Okay.
And they had been to every state in the United States and every single continent. Mm-hmm. And they were interviewing couples who had been married over 50 years.
Wow.
And they asked them two questions. And one was, what was the most important thing that had happened that helped them in relationship?
Mhm.
And the second thing was, what advice would you give to somebody getting married? The first thing at the top of the list all over the world that was important for a long-term, loving, growing relationship was to be encouraging in the way you talk to each other.
Okay.
In fact, the woman said, be cheerleaders for each other.
Be cheerleaders.
Uh-huh. And that was true all over the world, that the way we talk to each other matters.
Okay.
And the second thing.
Well, I'm going to say something about that briefly.
Okay.
And that is, men many times are reluctant to talk because they don't want to be vulnerable. So they don't allow themselves the privilege of self-disclosure. And I think men need to do more of that. Risk it, because it's a risk not to. But long-term risk is better to.
Well, now
share.
that fits with the second thing,
Okay.
the piece of advice that a couple married over 50 years wanted to give to a friend getting married.
Okay.
And it was talk to each other.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
There it is.
Uh-huh. Talk, even when one talks better than the other, let both voices be heard. Keep talking all your time together, and it will draw you closer together.
Just be learners from in the midst of each other, because we all have something to learn. I mean, this is almost 64 years for us, and we know we're still learning from each other. But if you don't do anything else, drop us a note, comment if you appreciated what we've been doing in these, and feel free to buy one of our books, because we'd love to know.
One of them is strictly on talking.
Yes, this Marriage for the Everyday.
Everyday. It's 365 conversation starters.
So at least get that one, because we think every couple could benefit from it.
We are, to our grandchildren, Mama B and Papa B, and many of you send us emails that address us as Mama B and Papa B, and that's kind of nice at our age to get those.
Yes.
We appreciate so much all the interaction that we've had with the audience during this time.
Exactly.
We think marriage is so important. And especially
that's why we do what we do.
In these pioneering days of the COVID-19 all over the world, a time that nobody has been through before. And we'd like to think that families draw closer together during this time by talking to each other.
Yes.
And realizing that in that talk comes the demonstrated love and encouragement that keeps us all going.
Amen. Well, that's good enough for me.
Okay.
Let's say goodbye, Bobby.
Goodbye to all of you, and thanks for your attention.
See you soon, maybe. Okay. Bye.